Hello and welcome to week 4, PA 213. We are in chapter 26 and 27 this week, and we're talking about antibiotics. Your discussion is actually on antibiotics, and so we will talk about that in our lecture today. So starting on chapter 26, page 308, it starts with antibiotics and anti-infectives. And if you can remember back in pharmacology, where we learned about antibiotics and how they were first created and the history behind them, that was what we talked about then. But let's talk a little bit about what antibiotics are in your book. It says antibiotics are a group of drugs that target bacteria. And bacteria are a single-cell organism that have a cell wall and cellular machinery and are capable of cell division, unlike viruses, which are not cells and must use a human cell as a host in order to replicate them. Because of this, many antibiotics target the cellular machinery within the bacterium, which is required for cellular replication, and inhibit its function. So what is it saying there? It's saying that viruses cannot be treated by antibiotics, and bacteria can, and that the antibiotics are made to treat certain types of bacteria. So that's why penicillin is not just given for everyone. It is given for, just a cold or just a sinus infection because it kills that type of bacterium. They're all labeled in that way. So it goes into talking about super infections. Super infections are what we call let me just read. The intestine is normally populated with a large number of bacteria called flora. Since they're supposed to be there, we'll call them the normal flora. These organisms assist in digestion, manufacture vitamins and lipid compounds, and also assist in the activation of certain drugs. Many of these organisms by themselves are deadly virulent bacteria. For example, E. coli is present in large numbers in the intestine and can cause severe diarrhea and even death. Since there are so many species of bacteria that must survive on food and water coming through the digestive tract, they compete for food. This keeps the growth rate of organisms in check. And most antibiotics target certain strains of bacteria. So when they are taken orally and hit the digestive tract at full strength, they selectively target and kill a certain population of bacteria. So like we were just talking about, they will kill only that bacteria. There are other strains, though, that don't just target because you might have more of a lethal organism. And so those are severe bacterial infections, and they take a lot of antibiotics. And so the antibiotics can actually take out our normal flora bacteria that we need in our body, and also the bacteria that is bad. And so a lot of times that's when you hear that women are getting yeast infections when they're taking a antibiotic. It's because it's wiping out not just the bad bacteria, but also the good bacteria as well. Okay, then they talk about general adverse effects of antibiotics. We just talked about it. Gastrointestinal distress, maybe some diarrhea. Can also cause hypersensitivity reactions, like if people are allergic to penicillin or sulfa drugs. Most times that's where the allergy comes from, is either sulfa or penicillin, and that's what people are allergic to. And there's actually a counting tray in the pharmacy that is only used for sulfa drugs and only used for penicillin because if come in contact with other medications, they can cause that person to have an allergic reaction even though they're not taking the drug that was counted on your same tray. So that can be life-threatening, and so you want to make sure you know where your sulfa tray is to count your sulfa drugs and your penicillin tray. They also can potentially decrease the effectiveness of birth control. So that is why every time we are dispensing an antibiotic to a woman who is on birth control, that we say that you'll need to use another form of birth control because yours may become ineffective during your antibiotic treatment. All right. So going on, so why is it, let's talk about your discussion question. There's a lot of different drugs that it goes through talking about the antibiotics, but I want to talk about the reason why a patient needs to continue to take their full dose of antibiotics. This is the discussion question. So if a doctor says for 10 days you need to take this antibiotic, but in 5 days you're feeling better, why should you have to take all of it? Well, here's what I'll tell you, is that there is something called a superbug, and this is also found in hospitals, because hospitals are constantly using Clorox, bleach, and these superbugs become immune to bleach, and they become immune to Clorox and immune to the cleaning supplies, and so they just become bigger and bigger. And because it says it cleans 99% of bacteria, that 1% then becomes that superbug and can become bigger, and we can't kill it anymore. The same with antibiotics. If you are taking an antibiotic for something, a bacterial infection, and that antibiotic is killing that bacteria infection, you stop taking it, the bacteria that's still in your system, although you don't feel well, becomes a superbug. And you can't take the same antibiotic, or your body will become immune to that antibiotic because it won't work anymore. And so that is the problem with people who are taking only part doses of their antibiotic, is because they get a resistance to it, and then the bacteria we have to treat comes with a higher antibiotic, and the higher antibiotic may cause more gastrointestinal distress, may cause may be very, very strong. And so scientists are having to come up with stronger and stronger antibiotics to get rid of these superbugs. So take your full dose. If doctor says 10 days, take it for 10 days, although you're feeling better. Makes sense, hopefully? All right, chapter 26 ends, and we go right into chapter 27, which is cancer and chemotherapy agents. It's definitely becoming a large part of pharmacy practice. I would say it's probably most in the hospital pharmacy is what you'll see with this. They can do central line infusion and that kind of stuff. There's not a lot of chemotherapy drugs that are over the counter, and that over the counter. Pharmacy, in the pharmacy, like in a retail pharmacy, that they would be picking up. They would probably go to their doctor's office and get it there, or pick it up from the hospital pharmacy. But it goes in and talk about those different medications that you can treat cancer with. See if I wanted to point anything out to you here. And so kind of a short chapter, talks a little bit about them. Yeah, so most of my lecture was mostly on 26, but 27 is also in here. And knowing the adverse effects of the cancer or chemotherapy agents, nausea and vomiting, loss of hair, or alopecia was loss of hair, bone marrow suppression, immunosuppression, and then really just knowing those quick study in the front would be good to know. Drugs that affect the coiling of DNA, that's one of the effects of chemotherapy, is it can change the DNA. And then also that there can be effects of or interactions with prescribed drugs or over-the-counter drugs, so that they have to be very careful of what they're taking when they're on those chemotherapy drugs. So that's a couple of things in 27. I hope that helps you answer your questions and also your discussion questions. Let me know if you have any other questions. I'd love to answer them, and hopefully you're getting ready for your pharmacy exam. And let me know if you need any help registering for that as well. Talk with you soon, and have a great week.